5 sleepers for the Week 3 DFS slate. These are the hidden gems who can help you take down a tournament in both Underdog drafts and DraftKings tournaments. Also, how do we adjust our teams to this new uber low-scoring NFL environment we've seen through 2 weeks? I have a few ideas on that. I'll share those later in this video. And then we'll hop into a couple of drafts where I'll walk through 3 of my favorite strategies this week for Underdog Battle Royale contest. I'm Pete Overzet. This is the Deposit Kingdom. Let's get to those gems. First up, let's go with quarterback. We have Seahawks QB Geno Smith home versus Miami this week. He has an ADP of 35.7. That makes him the QB 11. He has a really nice price tag on DraftKings as well at 5,600. And let's just call a spade a spade. Geno has been lights out to start the season. He's the 3rd highest rated QB on the year according to PFF, behind only Derek Carr and Kyler Murray, and he sits 4th in overall QBR rating. He had an 88.4% accuracy ranking last week on the road against the Patriots. And what's particularly crazy is he's doing this with one of the worst offensive lines in the league. Geno is absolutely dealing right now. His stellar play, though, hasn't fully showed up in the box score. That's why he's the Q quarterback 11 right now. He only has 1 passing TD in each of his first 2 games, but I expect that to swing back in his favor this week versus the Dolphins. Like I said, the QB 11 on Underdog means he's rarely getting drafted, which makes him one of the best scroll down options at quarterback this week. So how to execute this? I love a ton of the Seahawks pieces this week, and Zach Charbonnet is going to be very popular. He started out the week not getting drafted, and now he's screaming up in ADP. So I love the idea, specifically on teams where you don't have Charbonnet, of getting some of these Geno stacks. On Underdog, I like skinny stacking Geno with either DK Metcalf or Jackson Smith and Jigba, both of whom had awesome games last week. And then on DraftKings, though, I actually like the idea of double stacking Geno with a $3,500 Noah Fant, but I don't think you have to go that far off the board at tight end on Underdog. I'll share a better tight end sleeper for Underdog drafts in a second. Next up, we got our running back gem, and we're going with Raiders running back Zamir White. He's home versus Carolina this week. He has an ADP of 35.7. That puts him as the RB17 on Underdog. Also has a pretty nice tag on DraftKings at 5,500. And yes, I'm sure you're groaning. Everyone is turned on Zamir White. So this presents a buying opportunity because no one is drafting him right now or planning to use him on DraftKings. And most of the PR hit for Zamir is because Alexander Mattison vultured some of the goal line work last week. But what the mainstream media won't tell you is that Zamir's role actually increased in week 2. He went from 39% of the snaps to 65%. He also had 4 targets, which was really encouraging since he normally doesn't catch a ton of balls. And now we have a setup where the Raiders are 6-point home favorites against a truly atrocious Panthers defense. This is a team that just gave up 110 total yards and a TD to Alvin Kamara in week 1. And then last week, they gave up 131 yards and a TD to J.K. Dobbins. So this is the classic scroll the F down, one-off running back selection at the end of drafts. And the other thing I like about the Zamir White angle is Devontae Adams and Brock Bowers are getting selected in every draft, and rightfully so. Those guys were awesome last week. They're the clear focal point of the passing game, but now the field is super confident that the Raiders' points against a bad team are gonna come through the air. And this scroll the F down play simply posits, what if it doesn't? What if it comes from the ground and Zamir accounts for most of the Raiders' TDs? And I think it also lines up well just for the overall board this week, and that running back is pretty weak. So I do like scrolling down for guys like Zamir when you need a unique piece at the end of drafts. All right, now we got our wide receiver gem, and we're going with Chicago Bears wide receiver DJ Moore. He's at Indianapolis this week. He has an ADP right now of 35.4, which makes him the wide receiver 16. He's a little more pricey on DraftKings at 6,700. But the whole reason for this ADP on Underdog is the Bears stock in Fantasyland has bottomed out. You know, we had the rough primetime game against the Texans, but I love what I'm seeing from DJ Moore. His routes, his targets per route run, his targets have all been super consistent through 2 games. This dude has a 30% target share right now. He had the highest snap percentage of all wide receivers in week 2. He's not coming off the field. He had the 8th most targets and womp womp, the 30th most points, which means the production will catch up to the usage soon enough. And we all know how explosive DJ Moore is with the ball. Keenan is also still banged up. He hasn't been practicing this week. And Rome Odunze, the rookie, hasn't been commanding a ton of targets. So despite all of these positive indicators, DJ Moore's going undrafted in most of these drafts as the wide receiver 16. And I'm sorry, feel free to vault me on this, but it's insane that Rashid Shaheed is going ahead of him. Look, I know Rashid, he's connected for a couple deep bombs, super fun story, but DJ Moore is a much, much better play this week because I also like the game environment here in the Dome as well, and I think this is a chance for a DJ Moore explosion spot. As far as how to execute it, I don't have a ton of interest in stacking Moore with Caleb Williams, though I don't think it's a bad play. I think anytime you have a pass catcher that you're hoping to, exceed expectations, stacking him with the quarterback is a solid option. But I would rather treat him like you did Devontae Adams last week, which is you have an alpha target earner with a lower ceiling QB, and you just use him as a one-off play at the very end if you need a unique piece. And I actually have one really interesting angle for playing DJ Moore that I'll share in a few minutes when we hop into some drafts. Let's move on to tight end, where we have Dallas Cowboys tight end Jake Ferguson. They're home versus Baltimore this week. He has an ADP of 35. It makes him the tight end 8. And then on DraftKings, his price tag pretty palatable as well at 4,500. And this is a fun one because Ferguson didn't play last week, but in week 1, he had a 29% targets per route run and 19% of the targets for the Cowboys in week 1. And he's been practicing this week, and it points to him playing this weekend. I saw some photos of him at practice, did have a brace wrapped around his knee, but it looks like he's gonna be okay. And because of that Q tag on Underdog, which scares drafters off, he's flying under the radar as tight end 8, which means he's getting drafted in probably less than 30% of drafts. And on top of that, he now gets a Ravens team that just got lit up over the middle by Brock Bowers. So how to execute this? I think there's lots of different ways you can use Ferguson this week, and I'll share a fun angle when we hop in some drafts in a second. But he's the perfect pick when you get shut out of one of the top 3 tight ends this week, which for me is McBride, Bowers, and Laporta. Doesn't seem like Kittle is going to play. And so then I look at the tight ends who are going 5, 6, 7, and they look like much weaker plays to me than Ferguson, because you're getting this classic dynamic where I think Ferguson will project similarly to those guys, the Dallas Goddards, the Mark Andrews, but he's going drafted far, far, far less frequently. So I love Ferguson this week. And one note, if you are worried that for some reason he isn't going to play, well, guess what? The same thing happened with Evan Ingram last week, and the same thing could happen here. You'll get swapped to the next best available tight end who wasn't selected in your draft. And you can watch last week's video where we actually did a full breakdown on the swap dynamics on Underdog. And it's really helpful because you can basically decide, do I want the next best available player by ADP to be my swap, my default swap? Or you can manually go set your rankings. Say you really like Noah Fant this week. You could go put Noah Fant up to be your swap off of Jake Ferguson teams. And it is very ironic that last week we did the swap instructions after putting Evan Ingram as our cover boy. Then he ended up being the late scratch. And it was really funny in that one of the top teams in Battle Royale last week was an Evan Ingram team that got auto swapped to George Kittle. And then he won a bunch of money. So the Lord does work in mysterious ways. All right, let's do our final bonus gem. I'm excited about this one because all of our bonus picks so far this year have been running backs. Well, guess what? We have a wide receiver bonus this week. It's Houston wide receiver Tank Dell. They're home versus Minnesota. He has an ADP of 35. He's the wide receiver 18 on Underdog. I also love his price on DraftKings at 5,200. Tank, I would say, is neck and neck for me, along with DJ Moore as my favorite wide receiver play of the week. He's just too cheap on both DraftKings and Underdog because no one wants to play him after he flopped in week 2 with only 2.3 fantasy points. But he was also so close to a massive day after narrowly missing on what would have been a 70-yard TD bomb from CJ Stroud. And the other thing, like DJ Moore, his underlying utilization is still rock solid. 86% route participation and a near identical targets per route run to Stephon Diggs at 17%. The Tank Dell game is coming, guys, I promise. How to execute this? I mean, there's the obvious way. You stack Dell up with CJ Stroud, really like that. Or you could just use him as a one-off piece at the end of drafts. Either way, love Tank Dell this week. We always build a pick'em with some of our picks from the gems. It's just another way to get exposure to these guys who we think are undervalued before they have a big game. And on top of that, there's two very fun specials in the pick'em lobby right now, and we're going to take advantage of both of those with our pick'em entries that are based on the gems this week. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna make it really easy. First, we're gonna put Geno Smith higher than 1.5 TDs in our entry. Then we're gonna add DJ Moore higher than 5.5 receptions. Love that one. And then Zamir White, we're gonna add higher than 13.5 rushing attempts. So now we have our base 3. Now we're gonna add the last one, which is Tank Dell higher than 0 receiving yards. Yes, I said 0. So when you first put him in, it will say 53.5 receiving yards. That's his number this week. But then you'll add the gimme pick token that is in the lobby and just hit apply, and voila, Tank's number is now 0. So it's essentially a free pick. We just got to get the Geno Smith, the Zamir White, and the DJ Moore, and the Tank Dell one is a gimme. And I will drop links to both of these pick'em entries in the show notes and in the comments. If you guys want to tail, all you do is click the link. It will pull it up in your Underdog account, and you can easily get the same exact pick'em entry as me with no added effort. But you also notice here, we have a no sweat token as well, which means we can build an entry where we literally get our money back on an entry if we don't hit. So what I want to do, I want to put the DJ Moore, the Zamir White, and the Geno Smith back in our entry. And then because this one is a 4 pick max, we're going to get rid of the Tank Dell. We already used that gimme in the last one. And we're going to put Jake Ferguson in here. The Jake Ferguson number in the lobby is for a TD. Jake Ferguson to score a TD, it has a 2x spice. So once you have Jake in there, you add the no sweat token. So this is either a 20x on our entry fee, or we get the entry fee back. It's a free roll, no sweat, pick'em, love it. We're gonna have the links down below to both of those. And as I always mention, if you guys are new to Underdog, if you want to tail us for the first time, they're now offering up to a $1,000 deposit match, a bonkers number for a deposit match. When you use promo code Pete, it doesn't have to be 1,000, it's just up to 1,000. Whatever you put in up to that, they will match, as well as an additional pick'em special for you guys. So take advantage of that if you haven't signed up before. Every week we do a little bit Evergreen Battle Royale strategy, and I want to talk about something that's been on my mind with what's going on with the NFL right now. And I think this is probably one of the hardest things with all of fantasy sports, and that's knowing when to lean into macro trends that have been successful historically and when to deviate from them. When is it a small sample size? When is it noisy? Or when has the trend actually changed? And I've been thinking about this with DFS strategy as it pertains to double stacking a quarterback with 2 pass catchers, specifically in these 6-person Battle Royale drafts on Underdog. Because in my 5 commandments video, that was the first Battle Royale strategy video I did back for week 1, which you can go back and watch here. Highly recommend it. There's timestamps, so you can just jump to the 5 commandments. One of those commandments was, I prefer not to double stack a quarterback in the large field Battle Royale tournaments, because you really need to be perfect across all 6 lineup spots. And when you have 2 pass catchers from the same team, their ceiling outcomes can often come at the expense of each other. But I've been rethinking that as a hard and fast rule lately because of some of the current scoring dynamics we've been seeing in the NFL. You guys have probably noticed by now that scoring is down massively through 2 weeks, as is total yards per game. The average passing yards for each team is around 190 yards per game right now, just a truly depressing number. And you can see in this chart from Marcus Mosher that it's the lowest total yards per game that both teams have been combining for since the mid-2000s. We've essentially rolled the game back 2 decades here at the start of the 2024 season. And you can look no further than how this played out last week in Battle Royale drafts. The Kyler Murray double stack with both Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride was literally the optimal double stack, and it wasn't even needed to win the flagship massive Battle Royale contest because so few people played it. The team that shipped only had Kyler with McBride, didn't even have Marvin Harrison's big day in there. So the way I'm thinking about this dynamic is that when there are less good passing offenses, right, and there's less good game environments, I actually want to lean into correlation a little bit more. I'm still hesitant to attack the expensive double stacks because you do really need some big ceiling games from your top 3 picks in Battle Royale drafts, and it's just much harder to find a uniqueness angle if that premium double stack is constantly getting drafted by other people. But if you can get a high upside double stack with your final couple picks, and one or two of the plays isn't always drafted, I'm very open to it, and I think it's something we should consider a little bit more in this current meta for as long as we have so many gross games each week, and it makes it more of a priority to nail the one or two offenses that actually score a lot of points on a given week. In a second, we'll hop in some drafts and I'll share one of my favorite double stack ideas for week 3 contest. But before we do, I want to shout out the winner of the Deposit Kingdom Battle Royale League from week 2. If you guys happen to miss it, the Deposit Kingdom, this YouTube channel, the Deposit Kingdom Discord, we have our own weekly contest on Underdog that drops every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And shout out to MarkZorner, who took down the 1K top prize last week. He also had the Kyler and McBride stack that you can see here, along with Jahmyr Gibbs, Alvin Kamara, Justin Jefferson, and Deebo Samuel. And like last week, this was a classic play the best plays kind of lineup. None of these players were going undrafted. All it took was hitting on the best stack of the week, and then of course locking up Alvin Kamara, who is obviously massively undervalued in week 2. We were really close with one of our draft ideas. We had the trio of Dusty Vets idea that included Kamara, Devontae Adams, and womp womp Amari Cooper. But, we're going to chalk that up as directionally accurate. Just don't ask me about the Michael Pittman tout from last week. That was awful. But we're going to get better. We're going to improve here as the season goes on. And as far as the weekly league for week 3, by the time you're watching this video, the Deposit Kingdom week 3 league will be live on Underdog Fantasy. So if you're watching this, hop in there, scroll over on the carousel until you see the $10 3 max Deposit Kingdom weekly league. And then we'll recap the results on the portfolio review. That's every Monday at 10 a.m. on my live stream channel. Just search Peter Overs at YouTube. I do that show every Monday at 10 a.m. And of course, we'll always recap the winning lineup here as well. All right, now I got 3 ideas to execute in drafts. Let's hop in. All right, in the Battle Royale this week, we have 67,992 entrants. We got $30,000 up top. Let's hop in a draft and get some of these ideas on their feet here. One really cool thing, I got the Draft Caddy from my guy Bric over at the in-game syndicate, the draftcaddy.com. And now one of my overlays here, the far right one, is the draft percentage. And this is kind of in beta. They're working it out. Most of these guys at the top will be 100%, but this is going to be a really good, helpful indicator to remind me how often these guys are getting drafted in contests. So we'll talk about that as it gets a little bit more relevant. And in our first draft here, the idea we are going to try to execute is the Dallas double stack with Dak, CeeDee Lamb, and Ferguson. And obviously this takes getting a 101 pick to pull off, but we just talked about being open to doing double stacks in the right scenarios. And I think this is the perfect scenario to do it, right? Because we talked about Ferguson being one of our favorite gems as tight end 8. He's not getting drafted in a bunch of these. And Dak Prescott also isn't getting drafted in a bunch of these. He's down here at, almost QB 10. So I love how this sets up where our first pick is spent on CeeDee Lamb. We need him to have a really good game. And then on top of it, we know that directly correlates with Dak Prescott. And then we can tack on tight end, which this week tight end has just gotten thinned out so much with George Kittle likely not to play. There's really McBride, Bowers, Laporta, and then a lot of this second tier is the same. So I love the idea of scrolling down. This is going to work out perfectly. We will be selecting CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott and Jake Ferguson with these final 2 picks here. And then we know that just leaves 3 more picks. We know our quarterback is settled. We know our tight end is settled. We'll need at least 1 running back, if not 2 if we want to go that route, and 1 other wide receiver. So the reason I kind of explained it in that kind of evergreen strategy session here, but this is kind of the exact spot that I would kind of want to lean into it, especially because the field is going to shy away from the Cowboys this week outside of CeeDee Lamb, right? Like we can go look at the ADPs. It's CeeDee Lamb at 1.7, and then you're all the way down to Ferguson at 35.1, Dak Prescott at 35.1. And are there scenarios where CeeDee Lamb has a solid game and then Dak and Jake Ferguson do nothing, like, sure, like that's definitely possible, kind of what happened last week. But if you get the tournament winning score from CeeDee Lamb, like if CeeDee Lamb hangs 30 points, that's obviously very good for Dak, and it means the passing game is humming. So this is the spot I really like leaning into a double stack correlation, and specifically because Jack and Dak just sounds better, because Jake and Dak aren't getting drafted in all of these contests. I really like how that lines up. So we'll pencil those guys in here, and then we'll see what we want to do at the 2-3 turn. Ideally, it would be a running back here. I would love to get Jahmyr Gibbs. He's one of my favorite plays here. You get access to that awesome game environment, 51.5 point total. Nico, Justin Jefferson would be awesome picks. I'm also very open to Tyreek Hill this week as well. Like, I understand Skylar Thompson is the quarterback, but when we see the backup quarterbacks take over, it's not usually the number one alpha who takes a hit. Those guys still get their targets. We know Tyreek Hill can get it done after the catch. So I'm just not too afraid of Tyreek Hill here. So it looks like I'm going to get 2 of Nico, Gibbs, and Hill, which is really nice. To me, there's kind of a clear tier break once you go down here. I do like Devontae without AJ Brown, but to me, Nico and Tyreek Hill just in a different caliber. Oh, this breaks really well. I don't even have to go down that far because both Nico and Gibbs are here. So I'm for sure going to take Gibbs. I want to get one of my running backs, and I think we'll just take Nico here. He's more of a gift at pick 13. One of the things I like to do is take the ADP values at the top of drafts, because it puts you on combos that won't be quite as chalky. So there's probably not as many Nico, Jahmyr Gibbs, CeeDee Lamb teams, just because Nico generally goes 4 picks earlier than he did and isn't often coming back to the 101 drafter. So this is setting up really perfect. We have one more pick that won't be our stack here, our Dallas double stack, because we know we're reserving Jake Ferguson and Dak Prescott. So we'll have basically one decision to make, and that'll be, do we go running back 2 or do we tack on a third wide receiver? In general, the 2 running back teams, I think, have been projecting better relative to the wide receivers, but I think it's closer this week. I mentioned really liking Tank Dell. I mentioned really liking DJ Moore. I think some of the wide receiver options can go toe-to-toe with the running back options this week. So we'll see what's available to us. Because Jake and Dak are going to be unique, I'm not really worried about going super off the board with this 4th pick either. I think we can kind of just, hashtag play the best plays. So we'll see what's available here. Certainly would be open to, well, James Conner. I don't necessarily love having 2 running backs from the same game. I think I would make an exception here in that it's an awesome game environment, has a massive total, and both of these guys aren't going to leave the field if their team gets down. In fact, we'd probably see more Jahmyr Gibbs in passing situations if the Lions are down there. So I don't mind the, typical slight negative correlation between 2 running backs in the same game there. But we could also go to a wide receiver as well. I really like the Seattle stuff. We could also do Zach Charbonnet. He's been one of my favorite scroll down guys. I would like to have kind of a Seattle piece on a lot of lineups this week. Maybe we go Charbs. You can see his ADP has really moved up. Like when I started working on this video earlier in the week, he had like an ADP of 35.4. He's all the way up to 32.3. We could also play it through DK Metcalf as well. Chris Olave is another bounce back. So we have a ton of options here. Honestly, what I might do, this is what we're going to do. We're just going to lock up Jake Ferguson and Dak Prescott, because nothing would tilt me more than to record this, not be able to line that up. So let's get these 2 guys first, and then we'll just figure out what we want to do with our last pick. And this kind of illustrates to the point that always kind of becomes obvious to me when I do a bunch of drafts, is that there are these studs at the top. You go through these first 8 to 10 guys, and then it really starts to fall off to where I didn't feel like I'm passing on anything egregious by not taking my non-Jake Ferguson and Dak Prescott picks there early. Like all of the guys I'm considering, a Stephon Diggs, a Tank Dell, a DJ Moore, who's one of my gems. Maybe we just tack on DJ Moore. Like all those guys are going to be here. Same for the running backs. Charbonnet will probably go. But this is the part of the board where I'm not concerned if they go. When we look at ADPs 28, 32, 34, specifically this 28 to 32 range, these are the guys getting drafted a ton. that often don't project that much differently to some of these guys down here. And of course, a Zamir White, who was one of my gems as well. So we are set to go here. Dak to Jake and CeeDee Lamb. We got Nico and Jahmyr Gibbs as kind of two other alpha plays that we'll need big games from. And now we can kind of decide here. We'll let the room decide what we do for our final pick here, either running back or wide receiver. It is kind of interesting if Derrick Henry slides. That game script, you can certainly tell yourself a story, but I would prefer to just play this as Dallas rolls, and I don't really want to worry about the Ravens side of things. I mean, both Zay and Derrick Henry have been awesome this year, so I certainly get it. I think what I'll do is I will take Charbonnet if he's here. We could also scroll down. I think those will be my options. I'll take Charbonnet, who I do think is still just a fabulous pick this week, or we'll scroll down to DJ Moore. Wait, did someone take DJ Moore? No way. Look at that. The cat's already out of the bag. Man, DJ Moore already getting drafted. All right, Tank Dell goes too. Oh, no. Now all my gems are starting to get drafted in these rooms. Goodness. All right, I am going to take Zach Charbonnet. Let's hop in another one, and we'll try out another idea. This time, we're not going to get sniped on DJ Moore because I'm calling this one the Game Breaker Stack. And I mentioned how I wasn't super thrilled to stack up DJ Moore with Caleb Williams. What if we stack him up with Anthony Richardson? And the thought here is, with DJ Moore's massive target share, a ton of the Chicago Bears production could funnel through him. We also know he can break off huge plays. And same with Anthony Richardson. We know that the Colts offense can almost exclusively flow through him, where he's getting the rushing touchdowns, a few deep shots. What if we just capture all of the big play, the majority of the fantasy production from those two guys in the same game, and then we don't have to deal with a lower ceiling play in Caleb Williams, and we essentially stack up Anthony Richardson with DJ Moore, and it kind of fits together in a way where it's like, Anthony Richardson, none of his pass catchers feel great to stack him up with. We also have Josh Downs returning to the lineup this week, so that muddies things for the Colts passing game. And then I don't really want to use Caleb Williams. So we kind of mash these two together and say, what if all the production from this game comes through Anthony Richardson and DJ Moore? So we'll line that up. And then immediately I can start to back out. Okay, then what else do I want to get on this team? I would love to get an early running back here. Maybe because we just did the CeeDee Lamb team, we pass on Lamb here because I do think we'll want a running back play. It is weird to pass on Lamb, but I don't think egregious for what we're going to do. And then we'll also try to get a tight end that we like a lot. I'll want to get one of these top 3 tight ends if possible. So we'll put McBride, Bowers, and Laporta in the queue. And then, just thinking through it, to knowing that I wanted to get one upside running back in this room, I look at the picks at 11 and 14, and it's like, if Gibbs goes, who we just did in that draft, then we're starting to get into this territory where I'm not as excited about it. I'm not doing Jonathan Taylor with Anthony Richardson. I don't want those two kind of, cannibalizing each other's touchdown production. And so for this specific room, I just liked grabbing my running back up top because, man, I do find running back weak. Like, there's Kamara, there's Barkley, Achane, and Gibbs. Those are the 4 I feel really good about. And then I like my scroll down guys, but this whole mid-range, like JT, Connor, Henry, Jacobs, Kyron, like, it's a little dicier for me. So I'd prefer just to lock that up. So maybe on this one, we'll get our tight end here, probably with our second pick. And then we'll get like one of Nico or Tyreek Hill, I think, with our first pick here. This is how we get even on Alvin Kamara after not drafting him hardly at all through best ball season. The Nico stuff, he was had a rest day on Wednesday, limited practice yesterday. Not too concerned about him, although it does give like a slight feather in the cap of Tank Dell if he is just slightly dinged up. So we'll be able to get one of Brock or Laporta with our next pick. Let's grab Nico here again. You know what? The theme of this one is, let's not do the picks we just did in our first one. We did Nico and CeeDee there. We pass on CeeDee for Kamara. Let's pass on Nico and do Tyreek. I just think this price is a little silly for Tyreek. Again, I get it. You want to apply a little bit of a discount. And I like the setup for, say, a guy like Brandon Ayuk. I think this is where I would quibble. Obviously, you take Jefferson over him, you take Lamb, you take Amon-Ra. I'm not taking Ayuk over Tyreek Hill. I think Tyreek Hill should still be like, a 6-7 pick in this range, probably right at pick 8, honestly. I completely get taking Barkley and Achane over him. Tyreek Hill, so just slightly undervalued this week, I would say. And then I also think Laporta is undervalued this week. So even though Brock Bowers has the higher ADP, I'm going to play Laporta here. And this is just a little, little IKB trio: Alvin Kamara, Tyreek Hill, Sam Laporta. And then we will grab Anthony Richardson with our next pick, DJ Moore after that, and then we'll figure out how we want to land the plane. Again, we'll have flexibility as far as a running back and a wide receiver. And again, this is the thing that's so fun about coming into these drafts with an idea or a plan is it can help inform those decisions at the top. This one, if I was just doing this draft not on stream, I would have just taken CeeDee Lamb at 102. But to, mixed up the texture of these drafts, I had no problem mixing it up, but I will just re-emphasize that again. But knowing like, hey, I want to do Anthony Richardson, DJ Moore, that put me in the mindset of like, okay, I do want to prioritize running back early. And, I do want to prioritize tight end early, knowing that this is kind of the unique angle I'm going to attack. So, even just going in, whether it's a single gem at the end, whether it's a stack, it can really inform how you want to play this. So one little just kind of tip and trick. This is obvious for anyone who's been doing a ton of these drafts, but if you have 2 players in your queue and you're deciding which one to take first and you're on the turn, you can see the drafter behind me already has a quarterback. Now I don't think I would have been at risk of losing Anthony Richardson even if he didn't, although maybe he's now the second one up, but I know that he can't take Anthony Richardson. He already has a quarterback. So I take DJ Moore first here, and then I will take Anthony Richardson after those 2 picks. And again, we get in a similar spot here where could I maybe have tried to push DJ Moore to my final pick at 35? Yeah, there's a good shot he's there. But again, there's no pick I have to have at this range. If a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs had slid all the way to 23, then yes, I'm taking Gibbs and I'm willing to push DJ Moore because I think that value is worth it. But all of these players fall into a similar band for me that I just have no problem locking up the specific angle I'm targeting in drafts. And obviously in this one, that is the Anthony Richardson, DJ Moore game breaker stack. We lock up DJ Moore. This is a very fun team. We lock up Anthony Richardson. We now have Anthony Richardson at quarterback. We have Alvin Kamara at running back. We have Tyreek Hill and DJ Moore at wide receiver, and Sam Laporta at tight end. So we'll just be doing a running back or wide receiver to end things off here. Last draft, we did a Zach Charbonnet. Maybe this draft, we do a Mike Evans, kind of like that. Play an alpha game through him. He was a full practice yesterday. This is sometimes too where like the Q tags can be like, if you don't actually know how the practice report progressions work, a drafter might be more scared off of a Q tag than they should be. DK Metcalf, it was basically a veteran rest day on Wednesday, something with the hand, but then he practiced in full yesterday. So the Q tag basically shouldn't even be here, but maybe that's preventing him from kind of moving up in ADP, which is nice. So yeah, hopefully we will grab DK Metcalf on this team. We could also do, wait a second here. Did Tank Dell starting to get drafted in a lot of these? Man, this is brutal for this team here too. So they go Diggs and Tank. I think they thought they could maybe push CJ Stroud to their last pick, but then the Nico Collins drafter said, no, I'm taking CJ Stroud there. So interesting here. I'm a little worried. I put Tank Dell as one of my gems based on his ADP. It indicated he wasn't getting drafted in a ton. The caddy estimation here has it at about 30%. I guess anecdotally, in our 2 drafts we've done here for the video, he's now gone. So I'm going to keep tabs on that as we go. Still think he's a really nice pick, but if he does start getting taken in every draft, it becomes just slightly less attractive. We are going to get DK Metcalf here because this drafter already has 3 wide receivers, which means we can push the plane and auto select Metcalf. And so this team wraps up Anthony Richardson, Alvin Kamara, Tyreek Hill, DJ Moore, DK Metcalf, Sam Laporta. I like that one. And then let's hop in our final draft here. This one, we've talked about Seattle a bit. I'm going to call this the Seattle mini stack. So, oh, look at this. Davis Maddock always showing up in my my morning drafts here. So this is the Seattle mini. So I already talked about liking Geno Smith, and I am going to be doing lots of skinny stacks with DK Metcalf and Geno and JSN. But one other angle, and this kind of dovetails with being open to double stacks, is I really like the teammate mini correlations where the offense can condense around the running back, wide receiver. In week 1, there were a ton of winning lineups that had Joe Mixon at running back and had Nico Collins at wide receiver. You know, last week there was a decent amount of like James Conner and Trey McBride teams. When one offense does well, if the quarterback doesn't have a ceiling game or the rest of the quarterback pool doesn't separate, having just the running back and wide receiver pairing can work out really well. So we are going to do basically Charbs with either DK or JSN. And maybe we do JSN here because we just did a DK Metcalf team, but I'm going to put both in the queue. And we did draw another 101 here. So we're running hot for the video. We will grab CeeDee Lamb this time. And the way to play Geno, I wouldn't ever do Geno, Charbs, and DK Metcalf because I think you are banking on a couple of the touchdowns to then be rushing for the running back wide receiver thesis to work. But I think Charbs with either Metcalf or JSN is very strong. And this was another trend, too, I just noticed in reviewing lineups last year. There was obviously the Devon Achane or Raheem Mostert with Tyreek Hill. That running back wide receiver pairing often hit last year. You had Rashad White and Mike Evans were a running back wide receiver pair that hit a ton. And again, it's leaning into this idea of, man, there are not a lot of high-scoring offenses. Let me just get a couple pieces on those while the scoring is so low. And the Seattle offense is humming. We were talking about Geno here. Zach Charbonnet has an awesome role with Kenneth Walker out again. So we're going to lean into that angle here with their home matchup and assuming a ton of the production comes through Charbs and one of these wide receivers. So we're not going to take them here. This is still going to be in our sweet spot to get a couple of players we really like here. McBride is already gone. This might be a Bowers team for us. We've kind of mixed it up. We did the Ferguson scroll. We got Laporta in the other one. Tyreek Hill does go. Let's do I don't think George Kittle is going to play this week despite the Q tag. We could also do Devontae. Let's do Devontae and Brock Bowers here. I just think both Marvin Harrison and Devontae Adams are getting a little artificially boosted up this week just because of their big performances last week. So I don't mind dancing around them. I'll probably be light on both Harrison and Adams, especially because I do like Zamir as a scroll down play. So we start CeeDee Lamb, Devontae Smith, and Brock Bowers. And then we'll just have to think through our quarterback angle because this mini correlation isn't going to involve the quarterback. This might just end up being another Dak team, a Dak skinny. Because Jalen Hurts does go. That would have been the other option if we just wanted to do Devontae and Hurts. You can do that. But I like going later QB in general in these. But that would have been an option as well. But this team is pretty much already drafted for us at this point because we know how this is going to go. We are going to select Charbonnet. Then one of Metcalf or JSN, and then DK, and then Dak Prescott with our final pick. So you end up getting two DK Metcalf teams here, but one with the double stack with Ferguson. One will just be a skinny with CeeDee Lamb. And then we're going to get our Seahawks mini in here with Zach Charbonnet and the pass catcher there. I think what we'll do here is I probably will just lock up Dak. I would probably do Charbs and Dak. I actually wouldn't be surprised if Davis takes Charbs, which would be perfect for the video. Would be absolutely perfect for the video. We would maybe pivot our Chicago or our Seattle mini here. All right, Davis. I actually think Davis is going to take Charbs right now. Please do something else, Davis. This is what happens when you record content. You're just like, let me just get this clean. Come on, Davis. Okay, takes Anthony Richardson. Thank you, Davis. All right, we'll do Charbonnet. I'll do Charbonnet and Dak, and then we'll just see which of these two is available for us at the end here. So here's the team so far. Dak to CD. We got Charbs. This is the Seattle mini play, so we'll add on Metcalf or JSN. We got CD Lamb, Devontae Smith, and Brock Bowers. Generally, I find Devontae Smith is a guy who gets slightly overvalued in these, but that's when A.J. Brown is playing. Without A.J. Brown, I think he's certainly deserving up there. And maybe if we could do this over again, I would probably just grab Hurts. The thing that kind of threw me was McBride went early. I really wanted to get one of these top 3 tight ends in this build because I want to either be kind of scrolling down or getting one of the top tight ends. We had just done a Laporta, so wanted to lock up a Bowers here, as I think, McBride, Bowers, and Laporta are kind of the clear creme de la creme of the tight end position. DK Metcalf goes, so this is going to be a JSN team. Unless, if I get sniped on JSN, that would be pretty wild. But this will work out. Oh my God, I just got sniped on JSN. There goes the idea. But for you in your drafts, I swear to God, all of my secret plays, my scroll down plays were just flying off the board here. So we're not going to be able to pull off the Seattle mini, despite that being the idea. But we can grab either Tank or DJ Moore here. Let's do Tank Dell as the guy. This team, we didn't get Nico on, so we'll do one of our scroll down. We just did DJ Moore in that last one. And this is how you improvise in drafts. So there you have it, guys. 3 draft ideas. Sometimes it comes together. Sometimes it doesn't. If you guys want my last minute thoughts on the slate each week, I do a DFS cram for YouTube members on that other YouTube channel, the Pete Overzet live stream channel. That's every Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. We go through the slate on both Underdog and DraftKings. This video is way more Underdog heavy. The cram is way more DraftKings heavy. So if that's where you lean, I highly recommend becoming a YouTube member over there and getting access to that video. I share my favorite plays, react to inactive news at 11:30 a.m. And we do also do a couple drafts, build some pick'ems. That link is down below. You just go to that channel, become a YouTube member at the Hand Builders and Opto Bros tier. You'll get access to those crams. And I also do an interview series on Saturday nights for YouTube members as well, called DFS After Dark. Last week, we talked to Gumby from the Deposit Kingdom, who does a lot with Sims, with Battle Royale stuff. That was really informative if you're doing a ton of drafts. And this week, we have Glenn from The Solver, ETR's optimizer/solver partner. They have an awesome tool for simming out contests. So we're going to talk to Glenn if you're looking to get better or at how to understand or use Sims. You'll really enjoy that show. All right, guys, good luck in week 3. As always, let me know in the comments, who are your hidden gems this week?